still not at that 110 marker, but making progress slowly. And I hope that I can make it happen this year, but we will see, and all that. But I want to open up today's show with the Blizzard news. I think this is something that is the hottest topic because it is something I see brought up online all the time. This is an important discussion because it's also married with that we've seen so many layoffs within the gaming industry happen over the course of just the last year alone, pre even the acquisition of Activision Blizzard and Microsoft. And so what do you guys think about this? I'd love to start with you. Let's start with Elio, and then we'll go to Chris about this update.
Yeah, I mean, look, having worked for Activision Blizzard, like, this just doesn't surprise me. Also, it's something that I feel like the video game industry has been in desperate need of. I wish it wasn't. I wish it wasn't something that was necessary. But I at least from my experience come out of this thinking like this may be a little bit messy while they figure it out, because there isn't, there's not a lot of historic there aren't a lot of unions when it comes to gaming, right? So there's not a lot of the same groundwork that you can apply across disciplines that would be the same for something like SAG-AFTRA or any of those groups. But I see this as a win, although it may be a little bit messy for a bit. I'm hopeful, and I'm sad that it's necessary, but I do think it is necessary.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, Blizzard formed a union, all of World of Warcraft, the developers, the engineers, the designers from California, and also to the Austin team as well. So the entire, and they called it like the World of Warcraft Guild or something like that.
Yeah, it's like Creators Guild or something like that.
Creators Guild. And so they have formed this union, which has been what people have advocated for whenever you see these rounds of layoffs happening. Like, why don't you all unionize? And from my perspective, just the high level is every choice has positive and negatives. Just figure out what the heck you want. And I was like, yeah, if people want to unionize, I'm not going to get in their way. And if they don't, then that's fine too. I'm always just like, pick something for your, that you want to do and go for it. What do you think, Elio?
It was really interesting to me that like Microsoft was hands off in its creation in the first place. Because what was it back in 2022 or like sometime they were basically said, hey, if you do this, we won't stop you. Like they basically said that, and I was really shocked. And sometime during either right as they were acquiring Blizzard, and I wonder what the thought process there. I wonder if part of it was just hey, if they don't unionize or someone does something, the federal government's going to step in at some point, and nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that, but also I just don't. I mean, I'm like, stop sitting on your hands. Like everybody's like, oh, we just need the government to get its stuff together and figure it out. I'm like, I've been alive for 40 odd years, and maybe once I've seen that happen and work. It's just like I'd rather say like take your own life in your own hands and figure out what like go fight for your rights and the things that you hold dear. I'm not going to wait for somebody else to come riding in on a white knight.
I just mean Microsoft in specific felt that if at some point, if like the unions didn't happen, a more annoying version of like the FCC stuff.
And a few years ago, they started being more neutral towards unions back in 2022, something like that.
I think that's
Microsoft in general. Yeah. So there's been kind of the groundwork for this. The government in this is kind of the parent. And what you've got one kid punching another kid. And in a perfect world, none of Brian's kids punch each other. But to say it's okay, dad will be the reason that one kid doesn't punch another. It would also help if the kid being punched had the ability to better navigate that situation. I'm not saying the best solution is to arm the kid that is getting punched with the ability to punch back. That sucks. But we're in a situation where one kid is punching another. So unions, in my mind, I have family members that work in both manufacturing and in airline unions. Those are the two unions I have the most exposure to from literal family members, and kind of seeing how their career differs from mine working in non-union based industries. And from my perspective, unions make water muddy. They allow bad behavior to flourish. They allow people who actively don't want what's best for the company to sit in roles and be immune to punishment and be guaranteed raises and all these things. However, that comes from family members explaining what they and their family members do, and like seeing my family members that serve in law enforcement and stuff. Some of the things they brag about, I'm like, wow, that's really awesome. What great pride in your industry. Some of the things they brag about, I'm like, I don't think that's the flex you think it is. And so like, but when they also describe what their employers would do to them without that union, when I see what the employers propose from their side, the union is the opposite side of a pendulum that I wish had never swung so far in the first place. So it is the thing that claws back some just basic protections that the employer was not doing. So I think in this case, in the gaming industry, we are past due for unions, not because I like unions, not because I think unions are like HOAs. I think they make everything more complicated than it needs to be, but we're here now. One kid is already punching the other. I would love for us to say it's okay. All of Brian's kids are just going to get along and it's going to be great. But I already have a kid with a black eye multiple times. I've got a kid who has a broken arm from being pushed down the stairs. Like, we are past the no intervention standpoint.
And the kid doing the punching, just to take this analogy to the next level, is now going to be armed with AI robots that can do all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah,
they're way.
He doesn't even have to do the punching anymore.
Working out at school, like they just entered the football team or whatever. They're being taught at school how to get even bigger, and it's like, oh, this isn't going to make it better. I have got to do something to arm the smaller, more vulnerable child. That's where we're at now, and like I wish we weren't, but I think unions just are the solution to the employer-based abuse that the industry is now made the norm, because now it's a culture. Now you can't just go in and say, oh, we'll replace the CEO and it'll go away. Oh, we'll replace the game director and it'll go away. No, it has become the standard practice. So unless we're going to have somebody come in and negotiate on the behalf of the employees to set very clear terms, and yes, that is going to result in some moments that feel like, oh, I heard this one story of this game dev that only shows up on Mondays and brags about not doing anything, and it takes 6 months to fire them. Absolutely, it will result in those things. But the alternative is the just absolute tragic circumstances that are coming out of Blizzard on a quarterly basis. It's like their quarterly export is, we're releasing this many games and this many scandals. Like, it's just frustrating that they are. And so, like, you have to do something. And they're not the only. It's not like, oh, well, it's just Blizzard, so shut it down and it'll stop. The industry has a wide-reaching problem that unions could help solve.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see if this actually has like a knock-on effect where others say, hey, wait a minute, like that, they got that kind of protection. I'd love that kind of protection.
Oh, I will.
We see kind of various different abuses, and it's like, I know, speaking of the engineer, like, I've never been in a union, but I also have the unique advantage of I don't owe anybody any money, and Dems is talking about that. Like, you want somebody to defend yourself, and that's why one of the things that I said right at the start of this is that I'm not sitting on my hands waiting for somebody to come in and save me. The thing that you realize is you actually have more power when you're not in debt, and that's one of the reasons why these companies love to know if you are in debt. That's one of the, when you go get hired, they'll run a credit check on you to see exactly where you fall, and then they can leverage that. So it's about
whether telling your boss you're financially independent is also telling them you could quit at any time.
I could quit at any time. Oh, like, I don't think
I need a raise because my mortgage is putting pressure on me.
Right, exactly. And so one of the things is that outside of whether you guys ever want to be pro-union or anti-union, in right now, whether you want to wait or you want to collective bargain and all that, like, I'm more power to do whatever the hell you want. I tell you, change your life. Like, if you can get out of debt, you can now have the leverage and the power, because you don't have to do that. And what I have found personally, because we paid off all our debt, is that as soon as I did, all of a sudden my paychecks just went up. And it was like, you would wish that would happen naturally, but that's not the reality. I can wish for things to happen all the time, and ultimately there we are.
And I agree with that sentiment.